Well, hello, everyone. My name is Todd Costin, and I'm the Interim Associate Vice Chancellor for Planning and Educational Technology. Welcome to the first seminar in our Chancellor's Seminar Series. It's kind of nice on this brisk, chilly day to huddle around the warmth of our computer and engage in another Zoom meeting. I'm kidding, of course, but I'm actually excited about this particular session because it revolves around some of the questions people have as we begin to return to campus and engage with our students. So just a couple of quick comments. We do encourage you to be active in the chat. Make sure though that in the chat that you select all panelists and all attendees when you send your chat. Otherwise, your chat message just goes to the panelists and everyone else will not be seeing it. We will not be taking questions from the chat today. Our session would probably go way too long if we did that. So we do have questions prepared. We are recording this session and a link will be made available after the session is over. So with that, let's get started and let me hand the baton to our new Chancellor, Dr. Sonia Christian.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm here at the district office in downtown Bakersfield. It's one of the conference rooms. And I think there are so many good things that came out of the COVID pandemic. There was certainly a lot of heartache and not so good things that happened. But a good thing has been the ability for all of us to come together in community using Zoom. So I'm thankful that on the 13th day of my new job, I'm able to connect with, let's see, about 280 of you, 81 right now, who are tuning in for this 60-minute session on issues that are on your minds as we're getting back to our physical spaces. Now, technology, that's a good thing with technology. We can do Zoom meetings. The bad news is that my laptop, there were some problems, so I'm working from a different device and I don't have my prepared notes with me, which is good in a way. So I'm going to be brief and to the point. When I started thinking about continuing with these gatherings where we share information, Dina Rhodes was discussing the issues that have been coming up related to specific circumstances of our employees when they were sort of re-engaging and coming back to the campus, to the office, to the downtown office. So we thought that the first launch should be to address return to our physical spaces. So the outcome for today's seminar is really twofold. One, to provide information, but more importantly to me, is to signal the entire district that we are in this together. So in some cases, we may not have the correct answer, but what we're signaling to you is that faculty, classified staff, managers, we're all working together to find the best way to keep our employees safe and to keep our employees healthy. So we're here for our students and for the community. And that is the spirit in which we bring you this 60-minute seminar. The other main message is when we're talking about something that is district-wide, typically we are only able to provide guidelines. When it comes to a specific instance related to an employee and a specific circumstance, then please feel empowered to make your circumstance visible so that HR can work with you and support you and customize a solution that really works for you. So I want to show the gamut of district-wide guidelines, and then you have the colleges. Just yesterday, I was in a meeting with President Claudia Habib, President Sean Hancock, and President Zab Dadaboy, and we were talking about the shifting landscape and the shifting guidelines that keep coming up every day related to workspaces. And we were chuckling that the LA Times, for example, had come up with an article. The headlines were, every student in K through 12 had to wear masks. And then in a few hours, that was changed to saying, well, locally, the high schools could make the determination what worked for them. And then you have the whole issue related to vaccinations, right? If you're vaccinated, you now have a greater freedom in the guidelines for wearing masks. So there's just so many things that are shifting and changing. So what we're committing to you is really to communicate, to communicate, and to communicate. And the seminar series is going to be one forum in which we're going to be able to have discussions in a way that is not going to be, necessarily giving you an answer, because often it is more nuanced and it's more a discussion than a specific yes or no answer. I wanted to also comment about the variants. Our Board of Trustees, we had our first, in-person meeting in July. And one of the discussions we were having were about the different variants that are emerging. And the World Health Organization has developed a nomenclature to refer to them, and they're using the Greek alphabet. So even though the scientific way of referring to them is still retained in the research environment, the media and the public is using the Greek alphabet. So you have the Delta variant, which everyone is now tracking. And the World Health Organization has actually classified the Delta variant being a variant of concern, as opposed to the Lambda and Kappa variants as variants that are of interest. So they're sort of tracking it, but it's not sort of moved into the variant of concern. So the reason I wanted to call it out is to let you know that the teams on the campuses that are tracking the most relevant and current information that are being put out by CDC, by OSHA, as well as from WHO, where the COVID teams are tracking this information, and so is the team at the district office. So at this time, Shannon, if you can just pull up the teams, I made sure that we had a slide deck that the presidents had sent me. And this is the Porterville College team. Thank you, Claudia and Felicia, for sending it to me. And I think we have 2 slides that cover the Porterville team. There are the names up here, and probably those teams evolve as we move into the fall semester. But I wanted you to really see that there are many individuals who are tracking this information in a very close manner. And moving to the Saracoso team, thank you, Sean, for sending this to me. You've got the 3 vice presidents, and then the next slide, you have the listing of the individuals at Saracoso. And then the slide deck will be posted on the Chancellor's Office website, so you'll have information. And then the last 3 slides are related to Bakersfield College. And I know at BC, you have an instructional work group, and then you have a student work group. You have Nikki Damania leading this, and you have the logistics work group as well. And I see again, various folks, including our CSEA president, is on the operational work group. And I think that's my last set of remarks before I introduce you to our panel. I'll have our panelists at this point turn on their videos. We have an amazing group. And I want to first really recognize Dina Rhodes, and we can go ahead and take out the PowerPoint. Dina, thank you for being the first person to say yes to doing a seminar and pulling together, Matt Crow and Tina Johnson and Manny Mazzanos, reflecting the 3 different constituent groups and really partnering with Dina in trying to find solutions. I know in a formal way, looking at MOUs and so on. And last but not least, what can I say about Eileen O'Hare? In every statewide meeting that I go to, if there is a legal briefing for presidents and chancellors, the person providing that legal briefing is Eileen O'Hare. So we are so fortunate at the Kern Community College District to have Eileen really guiding us through very complicated issues. And more than being an expert in all of these matters, you know, it's Eileen's heart that I really love. And Dina tells me that Eileen is so incredibly busy, but when we have a question at the Kern Community College District, Eileen is often a text message away. She's so accessible. She jumps on and helps us problem solve and come up with a solution that is supportive of all of our employees so that we can be strong, we can be healthy for our students. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dina and the panel to take it away.
Thank you, Sonia. It's really an honor to be the first one to be able to partner in this seminar with you. And I'm very excited for the information that we'll be able to share with all of our employees and community that are on this seminar. And I think we have almost 350 people on here now. So that is very exciting. With that, we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll start the first question with Tina Johnson.
Good afternoon, everyone. My first question is, given that we're focused on vaccinations, do we still have to screen or test for COVID?
So the answer is yes. The OSHA regulations require the district to still screen employees for symptoms. Employees with symptoms may be asked to test. Employees who have had a close contact with someone have to be given an opportunity to test on work time and at district expense. That's if the contact is with an employee. So employee to employee, we allow testing on work time and at district expense. And an employee who is vaccinated but has no symptoms, so they've been they're fully vaccinated, which is defined as 2 weeks past the last shot. Those individuals who are vaccinated but don't show any symptoms yet do not need to test.
Okay, thank you. My next question is, in accordance with guidelines from Cal OSHA, which are forever changing, right now, classified members who are fully vaccinated are required to wear face coverings indoors, and they're not required to wear face coverings indoors or outdoors. Classified members who are not fully vaccinated must wear a face covering of at least 2 layers or more and ensure that they're worn over the nose and the mouth when indoors, in vehicles, and when required from orders from CDHP. Outdoors, though, no employees need to use face coverings regardless of their vaccination status, unless there's an outbreak as defined by Cal OSHA. So my question is, how will this be enforced if we cannot ask for vaccine proof because of HIPAA laws?
Well, we can ask for vaccine proof. The law that's at issue here is not HIPAA, which generally doesn't apply to community college districts. The law at issue is a California statute known as the Confidentiality of Medical Information, CMIA. And that law says that as an employer, we are not supposed to have medical information at all. So medical information includes vaccination information. In order to collect vaccination information, we need an authorization from the employee under the CMIA. Once we have that, we can collect vaccination information. The EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, has said that this is not, that this is a permissible inquiry. We can ask about vaccination status. It's not disability related. It's not a religious inquiry. It's not prohibited. So we can ask about vaccination status. Also, OSHA requires that we get this information in order to make the distinction you just pointed out between vaccinated individuals and unvaccinated individuals and who wears masks and who doesn't. So at the same time we get all of this vaccination information, we should be asking for a CMIA, Confidentiality of Medical Information Act, authorization. And then we can collect and use the vaccination information. If the employee doesn't want to give the vaccination information, or if they don't want to sign the CMIA authorization, then we treat them as if they are unvaccinated.
So, and then from the district perspective, at this time, we're using the self-attestation on the contact tracing app, or if they complete it online. So that at this point, that is the method that the district is using.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So Eileen, can we mandate vaccines for special programs?
This is one of the top questions we've been answering lately. Yes, we can require vaccines, especially if it's tailored to a specific program such as allied health or maybe athletics. There's very old and long established case law dating back to the 1890s and early 1900s dealing with smallpox vaccinations that say we can require a vaccination. There is a law called the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act. That is not a workplace act. That is a law that applies to the FDA itself, which says that the FDA has to allow people to opt out of vaccinations that are authorized with an emergency use authorization. And that's the status with all the big three vaccinations. Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson are all currently available under an emergency use authorization or an EUA. That law says the FDA has to allow people to opt out. It doesn't say anything about employers allowing employees to opt out of vaccinations. So it's an unclear, no definitive answer right now about whether we have to allow an opt-out for until there's a full approval through the FDA. We haven't found any, we have looked, trust me, we have looked. We haven't found any authority that says this Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act applies to employers and prevents employers from requiring vaccines. But the law is in flux.
Will vaccinations be required for all faculty, staff, and students who return to campus? And if so, will proof of vaccination be required?
So we are able to require vaccinations. There's this asterisk about whether the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act applies to allow an opt-out. But we can require vaccinations. That's the legal answer, right? Dina's going to talk in a second about the policy answer or the determination that the district itself has made. And as we discussed a minute ago, yes, we are able to collect proof of vaccinations. It becomes an administrative issue, though. How do you do that for 2,700 employees and even more students?
Right. Thank you, Eileen. And the district has not made any decision on that yet. Continued discussions need to occur. And again, we would have to negotiate the effects with both of the units before we could do something like that. So there will be discussions that continue regarding this.
Eileen, when it comes to accommodations and personnel who are requesting accommodations, which employees and under which circumstances would we make accommodations for? For example, those who might be in a high-risk group or living with someone in a high-risk group, maybe even those who have childcare issues. Where do accommodations come into play here?
All right. So we're required to engage in an interactive process to determine if we're going to if we are able to accommodate high-risk individuals. And that follows the normal interactive process. We meet with the employee, we discuss the limitations, we talk about possible accommodations, and similarly, if an employee has a disability, we go through the interactive process. We discuss essential functions. What are the essential functions? What are the limitations? And can we accommodate? What are the possible accommodations, and are any of those reasonable? There may not be an accommodation available in all circumstances. There are times when we are not able to accommodate. For instance, telecommuting might be a reasonable accommodation in some circumstances, but in other circumstances, it might not be, depending on the employee's job description, the position, the work area, and the employee's circumstances. Employees are not entitled to leave for childcare unless it's due to a school closure or a school closure due to an outbreak. And in those circumstances, they may have some up to 80 hours of supplemental sick leave available. But other than that, there is no requirement to accommodate or attempt to accommodate for childcare issues.
And Eileen, can you confirm that supplemental leave has a date of September 30th, that at this time it is due to end for that special sick leave?
It does have a sunset. I believe that is September 30th, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Eileen, earlier you mentioned the CMIA and the collection of medical information, and in this particular case, vaccination information. How would the district handle those medical records? And I think in a sense, what would we do with them, and who has access to that information should it ever be needed?
So those are confidential records, and generally those are stored in HR, and HR treats them as confidential records. They're kept in a separate file, a confidential medical file, and they're only available to individuals with a need to know, such as an immediate supervisor in some circumstances. But even then, only when the supervisor has a need to know. That information is very closely protected, and that's part of the authorization process I was talking about a few minutes ago about under the CMIA, this authorization.
Eileen and Dina, let's say we had a classified employee or an employee who tested positive for COVID, but the symptoms weren't bad enough to require them to take sick leave. Would they be able to work at home? And if so, what's the process to request this? And would it be something Like, would we provide information of the test results to HR? Is there a designated person in HR who would we contact to kind of work through that?
So employees who are sick with COVID and still have some of that supplemental sick leave available, they're entitled to up to 80 hours of paid sick time. If an employee has exhausted all sick leave, and if it was a workplace exposure, then we would keep the employee in paid status, but that's very unlikely. If an employee is ill, we want the employee to be resting and recuperating, taking care of themselves, practicing good self-care above all. But there are cases that are asymptomatic, where someone is ill, but they're for all intents and purposes able to go about their daily activities. We don't want them out spreading the illness, but we also understand that these employees may be able to still perform work. In that case where we have an asymptomatic employee, we would make a case-by-case decision about their ability to work from home. As far as how we make that decision, Dina, I'm sure you have input on that from a HR perspective.
Yes, so I think that, as we move through this, working with the HR managers at the campus, or Joe and Sheila at the district office in the district office in the risk department, those would be the contacts to work through these issues on a case by case. I think, as we move into this, it's unknown for all of us. So I think that those contacts are going to be the strongest people in the area to be able to assist employees with these types of issues. So.
Thanks. So my next question is, I think, have been on the minds of quite a few people. What are the district thoughts on any kind of discipline for employees who are not wearing masks on campus? Or do we have the so-called KCCD mask police that are going to be going around checking?
So the OSHA regulations tell us that only people who are, this is an overstatement, only people who are vaccinated may go without masks. While I wouldn't call them the mask police, we have an obligation to provide a safe workplace and a safe learning environment for our employees and our students. Wearing masks for unvaccinated employees is a requirement of Cal OSHA. Cal OSHA, and it's also, let me also say, it's also required to be in the CPP, the COVID prevention plan. Cal OSHA can and does issue fines for failure to enforce the mask requirement. That means that everyone who is not vaccinated should be using a mask. We will have N95 masks, which are technically respirators, available for any unvaccinated employee who asks for them. Also, we have the right, we the district have the right to require everyone to wear masks, vaccinated or not. And we certainly have the right to say that unvaccinated employees must be masked. If an employee is not wearing a mask when they're required to do so, that employee is violating the legitimate rules of the employer, and that could be grounds for discipline. Now, having said that, of course, we're going to try to work with the employee to explain these requirements, and discipline is always the last resort, not the first resort. So the discipline process exists. We don't jump immediately to discipline. We try to counsel and correct before we get there. Dina, did you want to add something?
Well, I do want to add that we will have masks for anyone that asks for them, vaccinated or unvaccinated. So there will be respirators or masks for anyone who asks the district for them. So I just, I concur with what Eileen says. We want everyone to be responsible. We want them to follow the OSHA guidelines. And if they have questions, come to HR or to Joe and Sheila for any type of advice they need.
Thank you.
So Dina, one of the concerns, particularly coming out of Bakersfield College, I think because of the configuration of rooms and buildings, is have the issues involving adequate ventilation for rooms and use of air purifiers been addressed?
Yes, so all three colleges have been putting in the bipolar ionization. And for those areas that are hard to reach, they have portable ones. And I did confirm that. So that system has been ongoing, and they're making sure that they have all of the standards in place. And I talked to some of them about, buildings that aren't easily accessible, and they do have the portable ionization purifiers in those areas.
Thank you. Again, to you, are there contingency plans in place if the Delta variant results in an increased risk?
So the district will continue to follow the OSHA guidelines. Our utmost importance is for the safety of our employees. We want everybody to be safe. And we've shown that we are flexible. We're able to move into a remote status as well as back to in-person. So I think, just as we go through this, we've learned that flexibility is important, and that we just have to kind of roll with the flow so that we do make sure that all of our employees stay safe.
Thank you.
When it comes to the reports that we hear, the information that comes out, guidelines and so on, they sometimes appear to be conflicting, maybe from the CDC, from Cal OSHA, even from the governor's office. Which of those guidelines should we be following?
There have been seemingly at least conflicting and certainly changing regulations, guidance, and that's to be expected. Coming back, opening back up the state, coming back to campus, any kind of return to what we're calling normal is just going to have bumps along the road. There are going to be bobbles here and there. We are required to follow the Cal OSHA requirements. That's the law. Then there are also guidelines that come from public health authorities such as the County Health Office or even CDPH, California Department of Public Health. The public health authorities tell us that the most important item in the return to work checklist, if you will, is having everyone possible be vaccinated. That will provide the best chance of avoiding illness or avoiding hospitalizations, making the illness survivable. If you're not vaccinated, wear a mask. Continue to practice good hygiene, frequent hand washing, general hygiene, still cleaning down surfaces as high touch surfaces as appropriate. All of those guidelines are in effect and are best practice in addition to the Cal OSHA requirements.
Thank you. And one last question from me. As we work with our colleagues and with our employees, some of the individuals that we supervise may not be willing to or prepared to return to campus-based operations, maybe due to personal comfort, safety concerns, childcare restrictions. What recommendations do you have for us in that we should be following in these types of situations?
So we understand that some employees are not going to be comfortable and some may come to comfort. In other words, they may start from a place of not being comfortable, but as we get back to work and we realize that, oh, we missed being with our colleagues, it becomes a more comfortable place. And we're going to work with employees. But it's important to remember that we exist to serve student need. And as students return to campus, our employees have to return to campus. It's also important to remember that although we've been working online for 15 months, we are not an online institution. We are required to engage in the interactive process with our employees to determine if we can accommodate employees with disabilities or employees who are high risk. All of that we will continue to do. But we have to be patient with ourselves and with our coworkers. Remember, it took us a while to get used to working from home. I can remember practically having to pry the fingernails off the door jambs to get people out of the workplace because we didn't know how work from home was going to turn out. And we're seeing it in reverse coming back. Dina, I'm sure you have more to add. This is a big HR topic.
It is. And we want to be sensitive to our employees. We understand that there are, circumstances surrounding different issues with coming back. Anxiety is a big one. There's the new variant out that creates some anxiety. And again, going through the accommodation process, working with HR will be extremely important so that we can support our employees and make them feel safe here. Again, we've been out of the office for quite some time. Now we're coming back into the office and it's a shift. So we want to make sure that we work with our employees, that, we're sensitive and we can help them get through these types of situations and get them to a good place here back in the office.
So thank you, everyone. That's going to wrap up our session for today. There's lots of questions, and this seminar could probably go on for hours with all the questions that could be asked. So what we want to do is we want to direct you. There's lots of questions I'm seeing in the chat. What I would do is direct your questions to your COVID team on your campus or to your HR people, and they can follow up with the nuances, for example, on your specific campus. So I want to thank our panelists for sitting in front of 370 people staring at you on a Zoom screen. There's always pressure there, but we appreciate taking the time. I think there were some really good questions. I think there were some really good answers. I know there's probably still more answers, but hopefully we can get more of those addressed. Remember, we will have another webinar or another seminar next month, so watch out for an invite for that. And then we appreciate all of you that have been involved in the chat. Keep it up because we love seeing all the stuff in the chat. And until next time, be good humans and have a great day.